Hi, I'm Kelsee Vandervall, music director of the River Raisin Ragtime Revue, and I'm here with a very special guest. I'm here with ragtime pianist and composer John Reed Torres. Hi, John.
Hey,
Welcome. How are you?
I'm all right. Glad to be here.
It's not often we get the chance to work with living ragtime composers, so I personally am very excited to learn more about you, the origins of your work, your inspirations, and just hearing what life is like as a current ragtime composer. I'll start out by asking, how did you get started with ragtime music?
Oh man, so it's a long story. I mean, growing up here in South Central Los Angeles, you can imagine there's not too many external influence of ragtime, you know. So I mean, just growing up, I heard it one day. Oddly enough, you know, I don't know how the little kid mind works, but I heard it from an ice cream truck. And I don't know if that was like sort of associating ragtime with ice cream, which I like.
Not
But
a
it was
bad
just,
combo.
I know, it was just the first strain of Scott Joplin's The Entertainer. But even at that young age, it stuck with me. So I was like, okay, I like that. That's all I knew at the time is I like that. So time goes on. I'm already gravitating toward older styles of music and just a plethora of interest in older things. Just because I can't explain it, just because I liked oldies, R&B, stuff from the 60s, 50s, kept going back to big band, swing, hot jazz, Louis Armstrong, Cab Calloway. And then one day I heard some radio program on the jazz station mentioning this movie, The Sting, with Robert Redford Palmer, and it played The Entertainer, and it said Scott Joplin. I was like, Scott Joplin, who was that? And I was probably still only 11 or 12 years old at the time. So I went to the library and they were still using yahoo.com back then. I was like, told the librarian, can you help me figure out who this Scott Joplin person was? So she took me over, Googled, Yahooed him, and bam, his picture pops. I was like, Scott Joplin was black. I was like, as a young kid of color in South Central LA, that hit a chord with me. Like I thought I was gonna look at a picture of like Mozart, Chopin, Bach, where I was like, wow, Scott Joplin looked like me. As a kid, that really, I don't know, made an impact, an impression with me. Ragtime music, that was sort of the threshold, the gateway to so many other things from that time period that really impacted me. So not even just the music, but the African American diaspora of the late 19th and early 20th century. And through this music, I learned about all of that stuff, like the civil rights movement, the early civil rights struggles, you know, the fashion, the architecture, the cars, like all of this stuff tied itself together, but is centered around the culture of the people. Like I feel sort of connected to that generation of people I never met by playing their music or our music because it's still here now. It's not, I don't want to say that ragtime was just then, it's still alive in a different way and the people who keep it alive today for different reasons. But like, I almost feel like, I don't want to say obligated to keep that alive because I feel like if that's forgotten, we're forgetting at least two generations worth of culture, American culture, Black history, that shouldn't be forgotten.
As a musical artist who performs and really specializes in this style, I would like to say that you truly are one of the current faces of ragtime. You are keeping it alive, and it's great to see someone like yourself enjoying it and really uh, committed and interested in the history of it, its significance, not just getting the sheet music and plopping it out on the piano. As one of the current faces of ragtime, I'm very interested to hear what is life like right now as a ragtime artist. I know, this is coming out of 2020 and a pandemic, but where could you speak on where you currently perform? You did mention is 1642, and this could
Mm-hmm.
be musically and non-musically. What is life like?
Well, it's been a roller coaster since 2020, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, what I find myself doing now, like you asked me earlier, oh, I used to be a movie projectionist. I was, at this historic theater called the Old Town Music Hall. And our late boss, Bill Field, founded that place in 1968. I was there part time and going to school and everything for like 9 years, 2011 to just into the closures of the pandemic, the quarantine. And that was really cool because we had our own annual Ragtime Festival, and that was a really nice environment to get the music out there to more people too. Because I would not only would I show, I mean, not only would I perform in the Ragtime Festival, and UB Blake actually played there back in the 70s too, and a lot of early like people who were doing ragtime at that time. But I would show film of depicting early Black ragtime dancing. And there's a film that was filmed in France by Americans from 1902 showing Black and white cakewalkers in the same film, demonstrating the cakewalk to a French audience. And the people had never seen that, and I showed it to the audience while I played on the piano. So it was like really interesting. And after that, I had a few different day jobs, but I've always been doing my music. So we did some online things in 2020. And, I've played different festivals, which is always fun. The West Coast Ragtime Festival, the Scott Joplin Festival, the Blind Boon Festival in Columbia, Missouri. I've played with Reggie Robinson in Wisconsin and other places. We were just there in St. Louis, or Columbia, Missouri, last July, playing at they got a new piano at the Blind Boon House that was actually Blind Boon's piano.
Oh, wow.
So we played on that. That was pretty fun. But now, other than online stuff like this, I'm still writing ragtime, but you have your period where you don't really write something for a while, and then bam, you have all these ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm going through one of those
Gotcha.
right now. But I did write a ragtime song recently, so that's in the works. But now I play every week at 1642 Bar, which is pretty fun. It's a wine bar. They've been open for about 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
And, we have ragtime every Tuesday night. So me and my friend Eve Elliott, we just play ragtime for 3 hours. We just, trade off. And it's pretty fun. Obviously you've noticed a huge source of pride in the history of this music and the Black history and everything, But I also love Los Angeles, my home city, and its various, influences in its development. It used to be Mexico at one time, native land of the Tongva tribe and stuff like that. So when I wrote a lot of my early rags, especially like Spring Street Rag and the Belle of Los Angeles, in the trio strain, I try to take it somewhere else for a moment, like sort of add a different chapter in what I'm trying to say in my piece. And I added a little like a Latin fill in the left hand. And I joke and I say, look at that, that's the Mexican part. My first piece, Spring Street Rag from 2011, a little old lady came up to me and she said, I moved away from Los Angeles 50 years ago. But she said, that part of your rag reminded me of Olvera Street. Well, Olvera Street is where our city began, where it was born. It has adobe houses. It's way back in the Mexican period. And I was like, oh my God, that's exactly what I was trying to convey. And she heard it. Like, I don't know, that really touched me. I was like, wow, she got what I was trying to say through my music. I was like, okay, cool.
And I think that's one of the great things, again, with living composers, you really get to see your direct impact with how your music is impacting your listeners and just an audience in general. I feel like I would be very touched by that too, because you put intention and your own artistry and your own ideas into something, and for someone to understand it and connect, that's the magic of music, I guess.
Like, wow,
so I've been to LA once, downtown LA, and I did have a chance to ride Angel's Flight. So it's really great to hear about your music in general, but I want to dive a little bit more specifically into this piece that that R4 is about to play an orchestration of. I do know that Angel's Flight opened in 1901, and it's the world's shortest railway.
Yeah.
I think today maybe it's $1 or $2 is all you need to ride ride the railway. And 1901 is the same year that High Society by Porter Steele was published, putting it in a ragtime context with pieces that I'm somewhat familiar with. Also around in that classic ragtime era, because 1900 is when Swipesy Cakewalk by Scott Joplin and Arthur Marshall was published, and The Entertainer was published in 1902. So just hearing, 1901 and thinking what was going on around that time. Again, yeah, that classic ragtime era. And then Angel's Flight is not only the name of this composition, but it's also the name of your debut album, Angel's Flight, Genuine Los Angeles Ragtime. I'd love to know more about, what inspired you to write. Is it in fact a piece about Angel's Flight? What inspired you to compose it? And also, when was it originally composed?
Angel's Flight, for Los Angeles history, really doesn't get any more ragtime than that. So right in 1901, you're right in the middle of the era. And, growing up, I would always go downtown. And a lot of the cities in the 50s, they tore down so much of their historic stuff. And a little history of Angel's Flight. They tore down this whole area called Bunker Hill in downtown LA in the 50s, urban renewal. And they took Angel's Flight apart. They put it in storage for like 30, 40 years. They put it back in the 90s. Something happened because they didn't do it right. And now it's back open again. I wrote it when it first opened back up again, I think around 2011 or 12. And that's when I wrote the piece, 2012. I just wrote it and I was like a kid in a candy store. It was so fun to me. I was like, oh man, this is fun. It's rickety, just like, it's so cool, And the piece, I wrote it with the train ride in mind. A lot of people associate ragtime with like upbeat, joyous, energetic, which it is. But if you listen to people who write what was called Mr. Scott Joplin called it high class ragtime for some of his rags, but classic ragtime. And it still has a sort of melancholic quality to it. And in addition to all of the syncopation and the danceable nature of the music, it also sings a song. It paints a story, which I think is really unique and difficult to express in music that's more regimented, like Baroque and ragtime and things like that, which I think is an extra quality to the music, an extra challenge to the interpreter. When I approach a piece, I approach it at the piano, but I sort of heard the melody in my head at first, and then I put it down on the piano and then notate it. So I wrote the first strain. I was like, okay, yeah. It's sort of da 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 da. It's just sort of a melody. It's like kind of like a walking pace, and then you go to the second strain, which I call it's sort of a dance strain, but not at the dance tempo because it's the 5-7-1 chords, which is like the B strain of the Maple Leaf Rag. It's sort of putting you into that ragtime sort of rhythm. And then when I go into the trio, you have the scale that goes up and down with the call and response parts. That's the train ride going up the hill. So I was like, okay, I need to put this sort of push, this motion in the music. So I was like, well, I'll just put it in scale. And that's what I did. The bass note that goes down to that pedal tone for like 3 beats, it doesn't change. The bass, that oompa is really heavy right there. To me, that's the real dancing. That's really like the high kicking of the feet and stuff and the cakewalk and stuff like that. That's really what, if it was a dance floor, they'll all be moving at that point. At the end when it gets slower again, I bring it back sort of. It's like a reminiscence, like, oh, that was a good time, a reflection sort of moment at the end of the piece to sort of leave you in. It sort of leaves the listener in a sort of, relaxed position. It kind of sets you back down in your seat.
The musicians currently at the time of this interview are preparing the music. But as I get ready to record, you just helped give me a nice visual. And as I record the part, I'm going to imagine myself on this railway, like on this train ride, and hopefully shape the piece a little bit. John, it's an honor to speak with you. And R4 has had the pleasure of hearing your music with our Respite with Ragtime series back in 2020. So in terms of our audience, so this is not the first time that our audience has seen you and heard your music, but this collaboration with you is a real treat. And I think with that, so without further ado, I will say that R4 presents Angel's Flight by John Reed Torres, arranged by William Hayes for our Ragtime Orchestra.